talking about a $92 billion increase between Air Force and Space Force. But we also need some help. You have mentioned in previous testimony and other conversations about the need to remove older buildings and facilities that eat into your operations, legacy systems that are too old to operate and maintain that all cost us more. That we need the authorizers to do that. So I think that needs to be a message that's delivered loud and clear to them. When we talk about modernization and readiness, they can become broad catchwords across the swath of programs. Golden Dome, just to mention one. There's a nuclear modernization through Sentinel, which has been out of control. It's 81% over what we were originally told it was going to cost years ago. We've got strategic bomber programs, tanker modernization, fighter jets like the F-35, and we even have executive airlift programs that we've been asked to plan from the Air Force to recapitalize those heavy-use planes. So we have no idea what is going to be happening in future-based budgets, to the chairman's point. That's why having things built into the base or in a supplemental where we can track and know how the money's going to happen versus a reconciliation is so very important. We talked about that yesterday. So, Mr. Secretary, back to what the chairman was asking, we do have to prioritize. I have to prioritize in my personal life. I have to prioritize when I put forward budget ideas with my constituents. So, Mr. Secretary, what are your top 3 priority programs in this budget that would face significant setbacks if funding was lower than requested? Same thing for you, Gentleman Salzman. What are your 3 must-have priority programs to get after this year?
So thank you, Ranking Member. I appreciate the question, and we have prioritized within our budget mission what we think is the most important. I think from a high-level perspective, the nuclear transmission is always going to be one of our primary missions. So that is both the B-21 Sentinel, some of the weapon systems that go along with those programs, and the infrastructure to field those programs are critically important. Again, nuclear deterrence is a no-fail mission, and we have to make sure we do that right, as well as the NC-3 that sits in the space side. So that mission sits in both parts of the Department of the Air Force. And then the new weapon systems, F-47, as we field the upgraded versions of F-35, all those programs are critically important to maintain match with the Chinese and other high-end adversaries going forward, as well as a lot of the munitions. And when I say munitions, not only the current munitions, but the lower cost munitions going forward are really a priority. I'm a little bit past 3 already.
You've gone past 3, and I want to give Space Force a chance to give me.
And he's probably going to have the same ones I will on the space side of the house, so I'll stop there.
At least fingers are crossed that he will, right? Okay.
This is the grade the boss is going to go.
He's your boss, yeah. I know.
No, ma'am, it's a perfectly valid point, and the increase is dramatic. And so focusing on the things that we have increased with this budget request, I would put them into those 3 categories. The space control capabilities that we're going to need to protect our assets and deny an adversary the use of space-enabled targeting against us. Second is the launch infrastructure to make sure we have the capacity and the ops tempo to continue to launch and put those capabilities on orbit. And then finally, there are the support structures that are necessary to enable the growth. And that's where you get the test and the training ranges and the training capacity to do that work.
What made this hearing important was not just the discussion about military funding itself. It was the fact that Congresswoman Betty McCollum did something that rarely happens in Washington when it comes to defense spending. She forced military leadership to publicly talk about priorities instead of hiding behind vague, patriotic language about readiness and modernization. And that distinction matters because for decades, one of the biggest frustrations Americans have had with Pentagon budgeting is that nearly every weapon system, every modernization effort, and every military project gets labeled as essential. But when everything is treated as an emergency priority, accountability starts disappearing. Costs explode, contractors keep getting paid, and taxpayers are left wondering where the limits are supposed to be. McCollum's line of questioning cut directly into that problem. She was essentially asking a simple but uncomfortable question. If resources are limited, what are the actual top priorities? And what programs could not survive delays? That sounds basic, but in Washington, it is politically dangerous because forcing officials to rank priorities also forces them to admit that some programs matter more than others. And viewers should understand the broader context here. The United States already spends more on defense than the next several countries combined. Yet Congress continues hearing the same arguments every budget cycle. More threats, more modernization needs, more urgency, more spending. Democrats like McCollum are not necessarily arguing against national defense itself. What they are increasingly questioning is whether the Pentagon has created a culture where cost overruns and endless expansion are treated as normal.